There's a lot of geopolitical flux, not just in the Indo-Pacific, but certainly what we've seen here in India in the last month and a half after the Pahalgam terror attack and then Operation Sindoor. What is the global view on what has happened in this part of the world, as also what happens now to the Indo-Pacific, the Quad? I'm now joined by a very, very special guest here on this special CNN News 18 interview. Mr. Richard Marles is the Deputy Prime Minister and the Defence Minister of Australia. Thank you very much for joining us, and welcome to India. You incidentally are here on the 5th anniversary of the establishment of the India-Australia Strategic Partnership. How would you view these last 5 years?
Well, I think we've seen the relationship go to a completely different level, and we're very grateful for the leadership of Prime Minister Modi, but also Prime Minister Albanese in taking forward the bilateral relationship over the course of these 5 years. I think particularly we've seen a huge step forward in terms of defence and security cooperation. We are more strategically aligned with India today than we have ever been in our respective histories. And it's a long, deep relationship with a lot of people-to-people links. There's a growing Indian diaspora in Australia. We share passions like cricket, and we were here. Well, I was watching the IPL final last night, and Josh Hazlewood. So there's all that there. But what we are doing is creating a strategic dimension to that relationship. Much more work being done in respect of maritime domain awareness, for example. And we have quite an ambitious agenda about taking that forward even further. In the last decade, we've seen a tripling of the exercises that our service personnel are engaged in together. And we think there's more we can do together, but together with other countries. And so that's exciting. But economically as well, I mean, we have seen as India has grown its trade with the rest of the world, that trade to the growth in the trade to Australia is double what it is to the rest of the world. And so amongst its trading partners, Australia is climbing the ladder from the Indian worldview. We are hopeful that SECA, which will be the next iteration of our trade relationship, is able to be concluded in the not too distant future as well. So a lot's happened, but as we meet and on the 5th anniversary of the Comprehensive Strategic Partnership, what there also is a momentum to go even further over the next 5 years.
I do want to ask you, I mean, the momentous events that have happened in the last month and a half here, the Pahalgam terror attack in which 26 civilians were killed, and then India responded to that with Operation Sindoor. And the feeling was certainly amongst the general public that major Western countries have not come out and supported India for its right to defend itself against these terrorists and these terrorist actions. How would you speak to that concern?
Well, firstly, we met the news of what happened in Pahalgam with utter shock. This was an appalling attack, and Prime Minister Albanese spoke with Prime Minister Modi almost immediately after these events to extend Australian condolences to India on behalf of in respect of the loss of life. And and as I'm here today, we've reiterated that, and to say that our thoughts and prayers are very much with the families of those who lost loved ones. I mean, we stand with India, as we stand with all countries, to combat terrorism. We want to continue to work with India in combating terrorism in all its forms around the world. We do acknowledge and welcome the stoppage in military activity. We actually see that as an act of Indian leadership. But we continue to want to work with India as we confront the scourge of terrorism in all its forms.
The concern among some quarters has also been that people tend to forget the act of terror, which was the reason why the military action happened, and now the focus is on some kind of equanimity between India and Pakistan. Again, how would you address that concern?
Oh, well, I mean, we see that there was an act of terror that we condemn. And in simple terms, we stand with India as we stand with all countries in seeking to combat terrorism, and that's where Australia stands. And we look forward to working with India to contend with and combat terrorism in all its forms around the world.
And you would support India's right to defend itself against this kind of...
Well, as I say, we work very... we stand with India and with every country which seeks to combat terrorism. We condemn this terrorist attack, and I stand. I'm here today very much making that clear. And as I say, our Prime Minister was very quickly expressing our shock at what happened and our condolences, extending our condolences to India.
You did mention a moment ago that you did note the quick cessation of military action, and you said that that speaks to India's leadership.
Yes.
Would you care to elaborate on that?
Well, I mean, we obviously we welcome a stoppage in military activity, but we don't take any of that for granted. These are difficult decisions, and we see that fundamentally as an act of Indian leadership, and we wanted to acknowledge that in the way in which we express our appreciation for the stoppage in military activity. In the same breath, we wanted to make clear that we do see that as not an easy decision and an act of Indian leadership.
There's been a lot of chatter around the fact that it was the US and President Trump who brought about this ceasefire. The Indian government certainly doesn't agree to that point of view. It was a direct negotiation between India and Pakistan. How would you view that?
Well, it's in the terms that I just said, and why we are. It's important that we express it in the way that I just have. I mean, every country has an interest in living in a peaceful world. So we all appreciate the stoppage in military activity, but we acknowledge this as an act of Indian leadership. And that's the point we want to make.
I do want to talk a little bit about the Quad. I know the Quad sort of started some years ago. It's now at the summit level. India is going to be hosting this year's Quad summit. The feeling seems to be it's sort of digressed or lost its way a bit because of all of these events that have happened in the recent past.
Well, I think this Quad is very important. It'll be the first Quad, for example, since the inauguration of President Trump. And so it's one that matters. Look, fundamentally, we look back to the creation of the Quad, which actually happened in the aftermath of the Indian Ocean tsunami, and 4 countries that shared values, democracies, seeking to work together to improve the way in which we could respond to that disaster and improve humanitarian assistance and disaster relief within the Indo-Pacific. The Quad has expanded well beyond that, but that is actually a good example of the kind of activities that the Quad is about. It is there to seek to improve the Indo-Pacific and look at ways in which these 4 countries which share values can work together in respect of that. It is not a military construct. It never has been. Now we have.
And you don't want it to be a military alliance either.
It's not what it is. But we have a military relationship with the United States, clearly an alliance partner, with Japan, but with India. And there are other mechanisms by which we can move that forward. Now, at a bilateral level, as we've said, in respect of the comprehensive strategic partnership on this, the 5th anniversary of that, speaking to my counterpart Minister Singh, we see that the fact that we have elevated defence and security issues to being one of the most significant, if not the most significant pillar in the bilateral relationship is a profoundly important thing. It speaks to the innate trust that exists now between Australia and India, and so we are progressing that defence relationship, and we are similarly doing work with the United States, which we've done for a long time, but also with Japan.
But you don't envisage Quad becoming like AUKUS or like the Five Eyes. That's never the intention, and that's not the direction in which all these 4 countries want to go.
It's not what the Quad construct is about.
Okay.
We work with Japan, we work with the United States, we work with India, and all of the 4 countries in one form or another work with each other in respect of defence. There are other avenues by which we can pursue that cooperation. I mean, we are democracies, and we all seek to build a rules-based order and a free and open Indo-Pacific, and so that we have that in common, and that does lend itself to defence cooperation, and that is occurring. But it's not necessarily the Quad, which is the construct for that.
But coming to what you said about having a rules-based order in the Indo-Pacific, you're just coming off the Shangri-La dialogue, and there's been a lot of chatter there where the U.S. Defense Secretary issued a pretty stark warning saying that there is a real threat of China and its behavior in the Indo-Pacific, and that he's urged countries in this part of the world to invest more in securing themselves. That was the reason why Quad came into existence in the first place, wasn't it? To try and ensure that the rise of China or its behavior is managed in a way in the Indo-Pacific? In
a sense, that's the point. I don't actually think that is the history of the Quad. Okay. But we do see China engaging in the biggest military build-up, conventional military build-up, that we have seen since the end of the Second World War. That's no small matter. They're doing that without a sense of strategic reassurance. Exactly why is it that China is engaging in such a military build-up? This is a significant part of what makes the strategic circumstances deeply complex for Australia, but for India, for the countries of the region. We want to work more with the countries of the region, and we want to work more together with India, but as I said earlier, together with India and with other countries.
So the concerns raised by Secretary Hegseth, you are affirming those concerns. Those concerns are very real.
We have articulated for a long time our concern about China's increasing military build-up, and that is happening without any sense of strategic reassurance. That's a point that we've been making for some time, and you can see the way in which that is shaping the circumstances of the Indo-Pacific and the way in which countries are responding. It is part of why I make the statement that I did at the beginning of this interview, that our strategic alignment with India has never been closer, has never been greater than what it is now, and we are seeking to work much more with India at a defence level, as we are with Japan, as we are with the United States, but as we are with other countries in the region as well. I mean, last year, for example, we signed a defence cooperation agreement with Indonesia, profoundly important agreement for a country right adjacent to Australia. And we're doing more with Singapore, providing its strategic depth, doing more training of the Singaporean Defence Forces in Australia, and we're looking at ways in which we can expand our defence cooperation with other countries, the Philippines, Korea, I could go on. All of this is about trying to build balance within the region, and bring together those countries in differing ways, in practical ways, to assert the rules-based order. We want a stable, peaceful Indo-Pacific in which countries mediate their issues and disputes by reference to the rule of law, not by reference to might and power.
My last couple of questions. One is, because there's a huge Indian diaspora in Australia, and a lot of them happen to be students, just in the last year or so, or last couple of years, there seems to be a bit of a clampdown by major universities or the immigration authorities in Australia. How would you address that concern?
Look, that's not right. I mean, we firstly, the Indian-Australian community is an incredible asset for our nation. There's 1 million Indian Australians now. It's the fastest growing community within Australia, and there's a richness to life, but just a sense of industry and activity which is really fantastic, and so we are very much the beneficiaries of that. In terms of Indian students coming to Australia to study, that is something that we welcome. It's a really important part of our educational sector. Education is a significant export for our country, and we want it to continue to be so. We welcome Indian students in Australia, and we are very excited about the growth in the Indian Australian community.
One final word. I know that Prime Minister Modi is a great believer in personal equations with world leaders. He's had a great equation with Prime Minister Albanese. He's had it with past Australian Prime Ministers as well. How does that change or elevate the sort of speed and impetus with which the other principals have to deal with the relationship?
Yeah, look, I think it's a really good question, and personal relationships matter, rapport matters. I mean, countries can relate to each other without it, but when you have it, it turbocharges things. It enables leaders to reach agreements, to cut through red tape, to make things happen. And I think what you've seen in the personal relationship between Prime Minister Albanese and Prime Minister Modi, which is deep and it is very warm, is an ability to really turbocharge the Australian-Indian relationship, and it's why we've seen so much occur in the last few years, and it's why we look with a sense of excitement and optimism into the future.
You said you watched the IPL final. Which team were you supporting?
Well, I've got it. Well, there are a couple of Australians, so I'm very pleased for Josh Hazlewood. I suppose if I'm being honest, the Punjab had Ricky Ponting as its coach. We had Stoinis and Josh Inglis. So I was kind of hoping that they might prevail. And to be honest, there's a significant Punjabi community amongst the Indian Australian community, and particularly in my hometown of Geelong. So, yeah, look, the Punjab Kings but still very. And look, you have to be excited for Virat Kohli for 18 years to be in the same franchise over the entire period of the IPL and to finally win an IPL trophy. It's a fantastic story. All right,
Mr. Richard Marles, thank you very much for this interview. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
News18.com marches way ahead of the Times of India with 38% more users on native and social platforms. Network 18, the undisputed leader of news networks, way ahead of the Times.